And thank you for staying with us and joining us here on PM Express. It's a conversation about religious tolerance in our schools. The Wesley girls question. There was a similar conversation we had when the question about the dreadlocks came up. But now it's also bordering on something pretty similar. Then they argued, those with the dreadlocks argued that this was a religious question. We're back to it. This time has to do with the Islamic community. And there are calls tonight by the chief imam for calm. There is a statement that has just been released also tonight by the Muslim caucus in Parliament. We're going to get into that shortly. But why are we here? What are we talking about? Now, we know that the father of Bashiru Ismail, a first-year Muslim student of the Wesley Girls High School, accused the school of preventing his daughter from participating in the fasting, basically, holy month of Ramadan, which is such a cardinal religious practice in Islam. Now, the school's decision to allow not to allow Muslims to fast has been sharply criticized, particularly by the Islamic community, because the school took a decision that it's not something that they will allow for Muslims who go to Wesley Girls to fast in the month of Ramadan. They have an explanation for that. We'll get into that shortly. There was a meeting between the Muslim caucus in Parliament with the school authorities. Remember that the school is part of the Methodist group of schools, and so they had to meet the heads there. Now, the caucus members led by Muntaka Mubarak. Muntaka Mubarak, by the way, is the minority chief whip in the matter. So this is a very high-level meeting. Representatives from the office of the national chief imam also joined them. Even the police service was involved, because this is religious tension, right? And you have to treat it with the urgency and importance it deserves. And that's why we saw the police service in there. The Islamic Affairs Directorate was in there. The Methodist Church itself, and guess who led it? And this is at a very high level. The presiding bishop, Most Reverend Paul Kwabena Boafo himself, was in this particular meeting, but this is pretty high level. Now, what was the outcome of this? And this is important. Pay attention to this for me. The church has assured, and this is after the meeting, the Muslim delegation of their commitment to resolve the issue within a couple of days. And this is way back, right? In one of those instances where there was a commitment to do something about it. Now, His Eminence, the presiding bishop, assured that the board of the school, of which he, by the way, is a chairman, will be meeting to discuss the issue, and the concerns of the delegation and others will be graciously taken on board for an amicable resolution of this. And that's what an assurance that was given to them. And they put it in a statement. But it didn't seem to deal completely with the concerns that people had, because we also saw the Coalition of Muslim Organizations, Ghana, also had a response. And they believe that what the school did was an abuse of students' rights. That's how serious they deem this to be. Then came the GES directive, the Ghana Education Service. Again, remember there was a directive also in the Rastafarian matter. The GES came with a directive to the school, simply say, allow the Muslim students to participate in the ongoing Ramadan fast. That was the GES position. And they make the argument that the directing authorities of Wesley Girls High School, as well as any other school, and this was a broad directive, so that it goes beyond Wesley Girls High School to any other school, to allow any such student who wishes to fast for any religious reason to do so. Did the school observe this? Well, in a statement, the school didn't respond directly, but then we rather heard from the Methodist Church. Remember, the Methodist Church had said in a meeting with the Muslim, caucus in Parliament, that they were going to fix it. They were going to hold a meeting to fix this and assure that it will be done in a couple of days. But this was the response of the Methodist Church to the GS directive. In a statement, the church said it took a strong exception, that's the word they used, to the directive, stressing that it cannot accede to the unilateral directive issued by the GES. And so this was in clear defiance of the GES directive, which the Methodist Church stood its grounds on. And so they were not going to see to that particular directive. Now, it insisted that the GES respects the long-standing partnership between government and mission schools. And by the way, there's been a long-standing partnership. I went to a mission school myself, a Catholic school, and so I know this. I mean, Ghana's education system won't be what it is without the support of the mission schools. And so that is clear, but that's how broad they wanted to make this about the mission schools generally, because they have their own principles. The school rule in question, from what we understand, according to the church, is a long-standing one, which is also non-religious, they believe, and that various renowned Muslim ladies in Ghana have passed through the school adhering to such a rule. So the point they're making is that this is actually not new, and that if you're a Muslim in Wegehe, you possibly would have experienced this before, and this is not new. That most Muslims, a lot of the Muslims who pass through there, well-known, powerful women in society have experienced it. So this is not a big deal. Then we have from the Wesley Girls High School Old Students Association confirming the position of the school, and they say the school's no fasting policy. The school has a no fasting policy. So this is not a religious matter. It's just simply no fasting. Was made for health reasons, but not to discriminate against other faiths. So this is an important distinction that the former students are making. That yes, this existed. It is not religious. We simply believe you shouldn't fast in whatever capacity. So the Christian Council then waded in, backing the position of the Methodist Church that you have to respect the internal rules of the school. And then the Muslim Professional Association also jumped in here. So this is really gaining a lot of momentum as we talk. And that they believe that this fasting at Wesley Girls High School and goes to the heart of Islamophobia, and which is a very strong word to use, by the way. Islamophobia and intolerance in Christian mission schools, which needs to be addressed. Tonight, as we speak, there's a latest statement from the Muslim caucus in Parliament, and thankfully, we're going to be joined by the Minority Chief Whip himself, who leads that particular caucus on this matter, as we really get to deal with this. Because if the Chief Imam's office is asking for calm, right? Is asking for calm, because this is a potential, ticking time bomb. If you have to deal with this, deal with it decisively and now before it degenerates. We're going to get into that very shortly here on PM Express. You want to stay with me? My guests are on right after this break. And thank you very much for staying with us here on PM Express. A very important conversation about our schools again, but this time has to do with religious tolerance in the schools on the back of the controversy surrounding the Wesley Girls high school decision not to allow Muslim students to fast. Joining me right now for this conversation is Mohammed Muntaka Mubarak. He is MP for Asawasi, Chairman of Parliament's Muslim Caucus, and I'm delighted that he joins us because they have a statement out tonight, which we're going to get into very shortly. Also joining me is Harriet Rekubrobe. He is immediate past National Vice President of the Old Girls Association, Wesley Girls Senior High School. I'm delighted that she can also join us. Kofi Asari is Executive Secretary of the Africa Education Watch, and Samira Suleimana is old girl of Wesley Girls of 93, 95, an attorney at law based in the USA. And I'm assuming that we'll get to hear from her own experience because she is a Muslim as well and she went to Wege here. And so I'm interested to hear what she has to say about this. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for talking to us here on PM Express. I want to start with the latest on this, and this is a statement that had just been issued by the Muslim caucus in Parliament, and in part says the caucus, under the able leadership of the National Chief Imam, and they've gone out all the way there, have received with extreme disappointment the communique issued by the Catholic Bishops' Conference and the Christian Council of Ghana, endorsing the stand of the Methodist Church Ghana to prevent Muslim students at Wesley Girls High School from fasting in the holy month of Ramadan. Now, the endorsement of the position of the Methodist Church Ghana by the Catholic Bishops' Conference and the Christian Council of Ghana came as a shock to the Muslim leaders. It also calls into question the years of partnership and mutual cooperation that have existed between Muslim stakeholders under the able leadership of the National Chief Imam and the Christian bodies. We state that if fasting, one of the key pillars of Islam, could be treated by the Methodist Church Ghana, the Christian Council of Ghana, and the Catholic Bishops' Conference in such a cavalier and flippant manner on the basis of unscientific, spurious, and trumped-up reasons, then our constitutional values of freedom of religion, religious diversity, and tolerance are at stake and in great peril. We're further taken aback by the stance of the Catholic Bishops' Conference and the Christian Council of Ghana in encouraging Wesley girls and the Methodist Church to disregard a lawful directive of the Ghana Education Service. We find it unacceptable for any religious group to hide behind the veil of majority or religious traditions to unleash tyranny and intolerance on the faith and cardinal doctrine of other faiths. If the disingenuous and dangerous argument of majority and religious tradition is allowed to hold sway, our country will be driven apart in our regions, district schools, neighborhoods, markets, businesses, states, among others. It must be stated that such dangerous arguments belong to a bygone era and have no place in a modern democracy like ours. We wish to be absolutely clear. The just struggle for religious freedoms and expression for all Ghanaians, irrespective of faith, in public funded institutions is no respecter of majority. They state that we will never relent in our efforts to defend our constitutional values of freedom of religion, religious diversity, and tolerance. And in fact, there's been a meeting, from what I understand, with the Minister of Education. And I want to bring in Mr. Muntaka Mubarak on this. Mr. Mubarak, so you had a meeting today with the Minister of Education. How did that meeting go? Did they resolve your concerns?
Well, I mean, good evening to you and your listeners and fellow panelists. Yes, we met the Minister for Education, as our statement indicated, a delegation of about 10 of us. We met the Minister, the Director General of Ghana Education Service, the Chief Director of the Ministry. And I must admit, I mean, we, from outside, we were more worried because we thought that the GS was quiet. They were not responding to all these statements. By meeting them, they were very emphatic that they gave a directive, and so far as they are concerned, the school is following the directives because they run the school, not the churches, and they employ the headmistress, not the church. And they were very, very emphatic that should any headmaster or headmistress flout any directive from GS, that person will have he himself or herself to blame. And they also state that the law that states establishes the Ministry of Education and Ghana Education Service gives them the mandate to run these schools, not any church or mosque. And for us, we are happy. They told us that they were going to continue the dialogue because they believe that most of these issues are coming up as a result of some misunderstandings. Even though while we disagree, we believe that it's a very clear thing. People just are trying to express hatred for another group, and all of us must stand against it. But they said that they were going to continue the dialogue, and they were also assuring us that as the new minister, with the new Director General for Ghana Education Service, the 2015 communique, which we give him a copy, they are going to study it and try to get all of us around. That's all the regional leaders, all the stakeholders, so that we'll be able to chart a path that we may never have to come to where we are. We left there satisfied. Yes, because one of the major concerns was that we believe that students at Wiggy may not be fasting. And he said, no, as far as they are concerned, they believe the directive is followed. The only unfortunate thing is that Bushra, the young lady who brought the issue up, belonged to the gold track, and she was home because they had gone home on last week, Monday. So she was home, so you couldn't have been able to check from her whether she was fasting. But I reminded him that her group, there were 25 of them. The rest of them who were in the green track were still in school. So it is for all of us to find out what is happening in the school and be able to, if still those who are still in school are not allowed to fast, then definitely we'll pick it up with GS. So I can say that meeting the minister and his team was very heartwarming, and we left there satisfied knowing that they were on top. And we'll continue to have trust in the Ghana Education Service and the Minister of Education, we hope that they will walk the talk. They will get all of us around to resolve this in a dialogue, in a way that, I mean, all of us live happy, so that we never have to come back to this. I just want to take this opportunity to, not to say caution, but to plead with the Muslim community, especially the youth, that you look or watch social media, the language, I have to say, is worrying. But please, what dialogue cannot resolve, believe me, even war cannot resolve it. I mean, we've seen America go into Afghanistan, we've seen America go to Iraq after over a decade of killing and maiming. They still have to talk. So we want to believe that, yes, our Christian brothers and sisters, Muslims, all of us together, let's try to dialogue and let's try to cool the temperature in our country. It is not helpful at all. And unfortunately, the region in the Council of Christian Council and the Conference of Bishops, Catholic Bishops, has exhibited the situation. But we just believe that all of us should remain calm. We may express our disappointment, we may express our reservation, but please, let's keep calm and allow cool heads to prevail. Because believe me, Evans, there are many Christians, sister schools that are doing excellent. I mean, they provide the meal. So, they said they asked for 10 tables. They gave them 12. They prepare the dawn meal for them. They assist them. They give them place to worship. They support them to break their fast. And this is a mission school. So let us not generalize it. And I have met so many Christians. I mean, in your own station, Opoku Gapo has given his account and showed his displeasure. I've seen Kwaku Sechi Ado. I've seen the former flag bearer of PPP. So let no leaders in the Muslim community assume that every Christian is happy with this. I can tell you, many more Christians are disappointed in what is happening, and therefore we must see us as Ghanaians and don't turn it into we and them. Yes, leadership will continue to talk, but let's all remain calm. And I'm very confident that the Minister of Education, under the leadership of the Minister and his team, will see us through all this so that we may never have to come back to this again. I mean,
this is so important points, and that to only re-emphasize the point about people staying calm and waiting for the leadership to address this. I want to bring in Samira Suleimana. And Samira, thank you again for agreeing to speak to us, because you are an old girl of the Wesley Girls High School. And from what I understand, you are actually in the Ramadan period yourself and fasting. You may have possibly broken your fast already, correct? Hello, Samira. You may have muted.
Can you hear me?
Loud and clear, yes.
Sure. Yes, we are in Ramadan, but I've not broken it. I have about 2 hours to go.
Okay, because of the time difference in where you are.
Yes.
You went to Wegehe. When you went to Wegehe, this is 93, 95. When you went to Wegehe, did they have a no fasting policy?
I do not recall a no fasting policy when I was in Wesley Girls High School. I went there in 93, 95. Now, I must say things were different back then. I don't recall anybody telling me I couldn't fast or pray. The issue these girls are facing goes way beyond just the fasting. And I'm just surprised that all that is being talked about is the fasting. They are not being allowed to pray. They are not being allowed to even talk to each other as Muslims. And so the whole concentration on the fasting kind of baffles me. Wesley Girls has never recognized the Muslim students. There's no Muslim association in the school, and there's rumors going around that there's an All Girls Association. There's nothing like that. We do not belong to any association. It's this issue that arose that made us, the old students, come together. We reached out to each other to try and see what we could do for the school. As far as I'm concerned, Wesley Girls has never said that students could not fast. Now, there was also the issue raised about there was an incident involving girls fasting in the 90s. I was in the school in the 90s. I do not recall any of such incidents. I think this issue about fasting came about recently, and the school is just saying that the students cannot fast. But the real issue has to do with the students not being allowed to pray, which is one of the 5 pillars of Islam.
Okay. I mean, thankfully, we have Harriet Rekubrobe, who is the immediate past national vice president of the association. And so, give us, because as the Old Girls Association, they issued a statement, Harriet, in which they made the point that the school's no fasting policy was made for health reasons, but not to discriminate against other faiths. Please explain.
I think that before I explain,
okay,
I think that we need to start from the beginning as to how they started, because I have heard a lot of language here, and it disturbs me, as somebody who also attended the school, and I have mates who were Muslims. In fact, one of my closest friends was a Muslim. We were in the same room together, and so it disturbs me. And in fact, I mean, with all due respect, I've heard my sister Samira speaking, but at the same time, I've also heard about some other, points of view from other Muslims who have also indicated that they didn't have any problems, But the main thing is that the school has been given a certain label. And we've been given that label because of a story that came out. And our issue is that that story is incorrect. It's a misrepresentation of facts. And I find it unfortunate that the school should be, accused of tramping up, things and making up stories and being bigoted and so on and so forth. I think it is a pity, because there are rules in the school. I mean, whether we like it or not. And rules can be changed at some point, So I'm not saying that things cannot be looked at. My main focus is on the fact that the school's name is being, it's being dirty.
Yeah, well, what really happened then? What really happened?
Yeah, yes, and I'm saying that what really happened is that we have the rules in the school that, because it's not that it's a Methodist school, but because in the past, in the 1990s, actually, that's the information that we have. And we have school people who went to the school at that time who have confirmed it, that the fasting started in those days, as far back as then. Maybe it was a little bit after Samira.
As in the no fasting policy started in 19...
Yes, the no fasting policy started at that time because of girls who developed ulcers and collapsed and so on. We cannot trivialize the health of people. If somebody collapses in a classroom and all the girls become alarmed and they go around being traumatized, I think that it's something which the school authorities need to take very seriously. And so that happened, and it was because girls were fasting. So the school just said, look, we do not want anyone to fast because you are here to study. You are here to excel. You need to be in the best of health for you to be able to do that. So please go to the dining hall at the scheduled time and eat. And this was a rule to the whole school. There are different faiths in the school. In fact, recently when all these things came up, I didn't know that we even had Buddhists in the school, but we did. We have people who practice Buddhism. We have the Seventh-day Adventist people there. We have the Jehovah's Witnesses. We have different, faiths and people who practice their Christian religion in different ways, all in the school. And so this rule was cutting across. It was a non-discriminatory rule. It was not targeting any specific religion. So I find it unfortunate that we should just put it out there, ban on Muslim fasting. It is not a ban on Muslim fasting. It is a ban on all fasting. It's just that a certain section, well, not a certain section. It's just that a young lady came to the school during orientation. She signed accepting to go by the school rules, which is something that is done. And the school rules included this ban on fasting. So she accepted that in mid-March when she went to the school. So later on in April, when she came back to say she wanted to fast, that is actually going back on a commitment. And the parents also signed up to it. So going back, and I have seen contradictory statements, so I don't even know whether it was the daughter that called the father or the father that called the daughter. Because I have a report, media report, that is saying both, that the father called the daughter also said, the father said the daughter called him, the daughter says the father, so we have these contradictory statements going on. But at the end of the day, what happens is that the father came to the school after the girl, the young lady had gone to the headmistress to go and ask about fasting, and it had been explained to her that this is a rule that cuts across all religions, and it is for a specific purpose. And she eventually accepted it and left. When the father came to the school, it was again brought up. The young lady was brought again, and they went over all that. And the father even said he had also, like you, I think he also attended the Methodist school at some point in his life, and he understood, how things are done. So it was surprising that we found that at that time, the media had been there. And this is a time when we are actually being very careful because of Corona. So you don't allow people to go in there without observing the coronavirus protocols. The media going in there, can I finish, please? Yeah, the media going in there, interviewing the young lady whilst they were on campus, not going to talk to the headmistress to look at the other side of the story. And then coming up to say the headmistress has instituted, as if it was a new rule, a bigoted rule, and so on and so forth, and it is a ban against Muslims. I think it is wrong.
But since all that, we've seen that the Ghana Education Service has given the directive that policy must change, that at least those who are fasting for religious reasons must be allowed to fast. You disagree with that?
Well, the issue is, for me, I am not going to actually talk because I'm not representing the school here. Yeah. I'm representing the Old Girls Association, which is concerned about the label that is being put on the school.
Okay, but what about the substantive? What about the substantive? We have to move from the label to the substantive matter.
Yes.
The substantive matter of a student who is exercising her religious freedom to fast, being told you can't fast because the school has a policy of no fasting for health reasons. Clearly, there's an issue there, is it not?
Well, I am not sure that I agree with you that if there's a general rule in the school and you have already signed up, you see, that is my difficulty. You have already signed up to it. So at the time that she was signing up to it, it's like she didn't mean it. At the time that she did the orientation and she met, the school officials, and she said, okay, so I will obey all the school rules. It means that she didn't mean it, because she was going to turn around and say, well, there's this rule, but I want to do this. And I'm saying that the school has a general rule.
Okay.
It cuts across.
Yeah,
so
it's not.
There are other religious denominations.
The rule that
if you decide that you are going to do this, if you decide that you want to change it, which really is not in my domain to say. I'm just saying that if you want to decide to change this, you do not want to discriminate against any religious.
Yeah. So that's where the argument comes that this is non-discriminating. I want to bring in Kofi aside. Kofi, so you've had the argument there. And Harriet had articulated it about this is a rule that has been there since the 90s, and that the school was simply enforcing it. We've just heard Muntaka Mubarak indicate that Education Minister says, as far as the Education Ministry is concerned, that directive for the school to allow Muslims to exercise that freedom to fast for religious reasons must continue, and is still holding. What's your reading into this, and how should this be resolved? Because this is a very sensitive matter.
From the education governance perspective, I keep saying that this matter is arising as a matter of a symptom. It's actually a symptom of a deep-seated governance challenge in our secondary education system. There is an amorphous arrangement which has made governance systems quite incongruous, to the extent that the policy owner, the oversight agency that has the mandate to ensure that secondary education policy is implemented and children of school going age are able to access secondary education of the right quality without being excluded, is the Ministry of Education working through the JNS. And if schools under their control have the audacity to actually reject their advice, starting from Achimota to Wesley Girls, then you must understand that the schools have a certain sense of emboldenment and entitlement to the extent that they do not see the genius as an outsider or an intruder whenever they issue advice to them. That is the challenge. So what we are discussing is only a symptom of a governance challenge where the schools feel that they are superior, then because they own the school, quote unquote, they have the right to determine the rules that take place there, and no other agency, not even the ministry, can intervene. But I say that since 1961, when the Education Act was passed, all mission schools became public schools. So in the strict sense of its nomenclature, in all our laws, we have public senior high schools since 1961. And the recently passed education law last year makes it clear under Section 26E that the GAS has oversight responsibility in the management of all senior high schools. It is this same GAS that constitutes the board of senior high schools. It constitutes the boards. The only one the ministry determines or nominates is the chair of the board. But an entire 14-member board is constituted by the GAS. Only 2 are from the missions, only 2. So I always find it challenging, and I always find it challenging to appreciate why the GAS will sound powerless in the face of the defiance, open defiance, by senior high schools, which is more or less an affront to its authority.
But what can they realistically do?
Because the GAS is the one that, the board of the school is the body that sanctions those rules. It's the board of the school. And here is the board where the GAS, through the Ministry of the ministry through the GAS, appointed the members. There are about 6 members of the board coming from government agencies. The Ministry of Education 1, the GAS 2, the Regional Coordinating Council 3, district assemblies. So it beats my mind when the posture is, with the schools, well, we have advised them and they are not taking it. It's not much matter.
Yeah, I mean,
because you are responsible for the decision of the school.
Is your position also that policy is discriminatory? Because you've had the argument that it wasn't put there for religious reasons, but for health reasons.
Of course, the policy is discriminatory because its enforcement constricts the enjoyance of one's mandatory underline, mandatory religious practice. This is more serious than Achimota, where Rasta is not mandatory in Rastafari, but fasting is mandatory in Islam. So the implementation of this rule constricts the enjoyance of the manifestation of one's mandatory religious practice. To that extent, rules are always subsidiary. They cannot supersede the constitutional provisions for freedom of religion and the manifestation of one's religion.
Okay, I mean, stay with me, Kofi. I want to go to Muntaka Mubarak. Muntaka Mubarak, do you accept the argument that this is a non-discriminatory rule, was introduced for health reasons?
It's not true. I'm sorry. I've been struggling since she said it. I've been scanning my mind to get a more polite word. It is not true. It's false. It's a lie. Because if you look at the Methodist Church statement, they said this is the rule that has been there for 186 years. Now they are telling us, the Austrian has said that since the 1990s. She just told you that they signed. I challenge her to produce the rules that the parents signed. The parent is holding the rule, and I have seen it myself. Nowhere in the parent consent that is written that in this school we have a policy of no fasting. It's not true. You see, this is my biggest worry with us as Ghanaians. When an issue comes up, all we try to do is to cover up. Admit your fault, apologize to the general public, and make sure that you make amends. Let's live as peaceful people. It may not be that when it started, it was deliberate. Now there's a serious concern. Look, people just keep talking about Bushra, the young lady. She said there were 25 of them. It is only her who father managed to get to the school. All the 25 of her, 25 of them, were called by the headmistress. And the headmistress, according to this young lady, if what I'm saying, I mean, what she told me and what I've heard she and her father said is right, that before the headmistress was asking the 25 of them, have she, as headmistress, faulted in any way? Has she wronged them? And if any of them had any concern, they should raise their hand. That more than 21 of them raised their hands, and the headmistress had to listen to all manner of accounts of abuse and virtually traumatizing situation that they find themselves in the school. So let's know we have any old school or church try to come in and pretend. Look, Evans, with the greatest of respect, people talk and they say that, oh, go and build yours. The Muslims should go and build theirs. The Muslims have schools. They have schools. Tia Ahmadiyya. If I don't know anything, I only got educated today by the General Secretary of the Ahmadiyya Muslim Mission. 3 past presiding bishops of the Methodist Church were all old students of Tia Ahmad. Let's ask them, when they were in Tia Ahmad, what situation did they go through? Were they forced to read? Were they forced to buy Quran? Were they forced to read Quran? Were they forced to fast? Were they forced to perform ablution? Were they forced to perform salat in the mosque? In fact, in Tia Ahmad, I know for a fact, on Sundays, they facilitate the Christians with school bus to go to church. I know Islamic Secondary School in Kumasi is one of the largest school, one of the largest school we have in the country today in terms of population. You go there, I mean, it's so beautiful. Anytime I go there, I praise the administration. The way they've allowed all the various groupings to be able to perform in a coordinated manner that doesn't create chaos. So when they are going to have an activity that is Islamic, they create a room for the Christians to be able to congregate so that they are not loitering around. They created an environment. I heard Kokusechi Ado when he was talking about the Achimota experience. I've heard my own second born who attended Presec tells me that, look, they take care of our dorm meal, they take care of our iftar in the evening. When there's a church service, they allow us to congregate as Gimsa Ghana Muslim Students Association, and they get us somebody to come and talk to us. We can do it. We should stop pretending. What they did is wrong. They should just accept that they've done the wrong thing. They are ready to amend, to right the wrong, and let's stop. Oh, it is a rule. It is a rule. I challenge them to produce the rule that the claim parents have signed. And I'll bring the rule that parent has signed in the school, and we'll look at it. So even if, like my other brother said, that Mr. Bobi, right?
That's Kofi Asare.
I'm talking about the other gentleman.
Yes, Kofi.
Kofi from the Education Watch Africa. What he said, you cannot have a rule that supersedes the rules of our country. We cannot do that. And lastly, very, very important, very, very, very important. You see, this posture that this school is ours, like he rightly said, Evans, we are doing an intellectual argument. Go and check the ordinance 1809. That's before independence. All these mission schools, before government took over, the colonial masters took over, they had to sign under the taking that the only way public funds will be spent in this school is that you are going to hand it over for it to be a public property. And when it becomes a public property, yes, you'll be allowed to have your activities, whether you are Muslims or Christians. But any other person that does not believe in your faith will not be coerced into participating. And for every child that you abuse or you coerce to participate in your legal activity, if you check the Education Act of 1961, you are fined £50. £50 for every child. So let's not pretend today as if it is something new. And this struggle that this is our school, you handed it over. Evans, you know, before we gained independence in 1957, or even before the first election of 1951. We had the Asante Confederation, we had all manner of chiefs, we had all manner of rulers, the Northern Territory, we had the Togo land. We all subsumed our individual roots to the Constitution of Ghana, and we handed over that we are going to live collectively. And in living collectively, we all abide by one rule. So you cannot just go and create silos and be creating problems. Let's just live, because you see, one of the major challenges that we are now having, look, you have Suhum Girls, you have Islamic Secondary School, you have T.I. Ahmadiyya Mission School, several of them. You have Ghana Muslim Association. No, they are something criminals. They have a group. They have schools all over, and now you are having radicals within them saying that let's have reprisal. And we are talking, look, we won't allow any imam or any pastor to disintegrate this country into chaos. This is a country for you and I, Evans. We must speak out. We won't allow bigotry, whether it is coming from the Christian community or the Muslim community or the Buddhist community or any community. We are one unit, it's a unity state. We all subscribe to live under this constitution. Let us respect it.
Yeah.
I mean, if you come to Ababu, where I was born, Evans, that's one. Compound houses. My next door neighbor is a Christian. Sundays, we help them to face their way so that they can go to church. Friday, they take care of our children, we go to the mosque. During Christmas, we feast with them. During Eid al-Fitr, we feast with them. To date. I'm a member of parliament. You go and ask where I'm born. I still, just to this morning, I was distributing Eid al-Fitr gifts, including the Christians that live there.
Let me ask you. Let me ask you back to the basics. We have a situation now that the Methodist Church, after meeting you, issued a statement saying they stand by the policy. You've met the education minister. Did he indicate how they plan to enforce their directive?
Well, the education minister and the director general of PTS are very, very clear that these headmasters are their employees. They are not employees of the church or the mosque. And when they give directives and you decide to follow a church or a mosque, you do that at your own peril. But they believe that they must engage both the church and the mosque. That's the imams, the pastors, and so that we dialogue and stop the war of words.
Okay, I want to bring in quickly. Samira. Samira, so you are a former student.
And forced to speak as a Muslim caucus is that there's so much tension in the community that if you don't go out to try to calm nerves, you may not know in the next morning what the youth or others may want to do, and then you may not also know what reprisal that may come from the Christian community. That is why we keep urging people to be calm. Allow the ministry to lead, and all the imams, the pastors, let's listen to the ministry. They will create a table. We will try and go and talk and be able to get over this through dialogue. Very important.
And not conflict. Samira, from those of you who went to the school who are Muslims, is there a conversation amongst yourself on how you can engage the school to resolve this peacefully?
Yes, we are talking about it. But first of all, the school issued their statement. I believe that was the May 5th statement, saying that a lot of Muslim students went through the school without any issues. The school did not reach out to any of the old Muslim students. There's about 90 of us that have been able to come together since this started. They did not reach out to ask us our experiences there. Basically just said,
but you didn't have any issue at your time, did you?
I wouldn't say I didn't have any issue, but then whatever I went through has become worse. Now, I cannot say that I was prevented from fasting or from praying, but from what I'm hearing from these young girls that I'm talking to, the school has become basically hell for them. They are not allowed to pray. They are told that they have to sit on their bed to pray. When you even attempt to pray, as the way Muslims pray, try to prostrate, your own schoolmates will surround you, basically like a circus. Some resort to reporting them to the headmistress. There are incidents where some of the students reported that the headmistress called them and basically told them off, said, you are not allowed to pray in this school. You cannot use any part of this school to pray. So the issue that the students are facing, the fasting is just the tip of the iceberg. Now, my older sister Harriet talked about the undertaking that these students signed. I've read that undertaking. Basically, it says that they have agreed to follow the Methodist way and follow the school rules. Nowhere in that undertaking does it say that they have agreed not to fast or they have agreed not to pray. So when we talk about the experiences that we are going through at the school now, it's just very, very bad. It's a bad situation for the students that are there right now. Now, I also wanted to bring out the issue about the health that is being raised, that the rules is to prevent the student from health. A lot of these girls have been fasting from a tender age. My own children, I have a 17-year-old son, and I also have a 9-year-old daughter. My daughter started fasting last year. I myself started fasting at about 8 years old before I went to Wesley Girls. So the excuse that the school is giving that if students are fasting, then it would affect them academically, there is no scientific backing for that.
Okay.
You know.
I want to take a quick break. When I return, Kofi, I'll ask you, so at this point, this has to be resolved. Should the ministry take a narrow approach of dealing with this with the Wegehe? How do they enforce it? But broadly, from the policy point of view, to prevent this from coming up again on the back of Achimota, what is the best policy option for the GES and Education Ministry? Stay with us. My guest, Muntaka Mubarak, Kofi Asari. Harriet is the immediate past Vice President of the Old Girls Association, and of course, Samira. Kofi, let me ask you, so how should the GES and Education Ministry go about resolving this? Specifically first with Wegehe, they have a directive. How do they enforce it? And secondly, the broad national policy on discrimination in our schools.
I think this issue is an opportunity and not a problem. It's an opportunity for us to make changes in rules that may have outlived their usefulness across the centuries. Rules codified and uncodified that exist in our senior high schools that we may not know about, but may be inconsistent with the Constitution and inconsistent with modernity, may not be relevant, and may not be inclusive. And so it is an opportunity for us, so far as we see it. Last week, I submitted a letter to the minister, which he has acknowledged, and I proposed some steps that we can follow. I discussed same with the chairman of the Parliamentary Select Committee on Education, and he seemed to be in agreement with the proposals. The first is that we need to conduct a baseline of existing codified rules and uncodified rules in all our schools, to have a sense of the rules that exist conventionally or written. Second is to standardize the rules, irrespective of the mission. Every school is a public school. We need to have one set of rules governing all senior high schools that are government assisted or are run with the state funds. Third, build consensus amongst all the key stakeholders. There are NGOs that own schools. There are private agencies that own schools, that are government assisted. There are religious bodies that own schools. Let's bring all of them together for them to adopt a common code of conduct for all the schools, focusing on education, not religion, education, because the child is in school first to learn. And then, after we've done that, we ensure that these standardized rules are consistent with our Constitution, are sufficiently inclusive, and they are also consistent with the modern demands of modernity and discipline, so as not to compromise on discipline. It is when we have these standardized codes that the regulator, or if you like, the oversight agency, GES, would be able to monitor the implementation of these standardized codes in all 700 plus public senior high schools. But in the situation where every school have their own codified and uncodified rules, it makes it very challenging to coordinate the implementation. But let me quickly add that in the case of Ugehe, the GES will have to work through the board of the school. As I mentioned, the GES appoints the majority of the board members. They have control over the school's board, which is the highest decision-making body in the governance of the school at the school level. And so they should work through the board and try and, achieve some sanity there. I was expecting the statement that came from the Methodist Church to have come from the school board, because this matter was a school matter. It wasn't a church matter. That is where we drifted into the religious issues. And so the genius can work through the school board and facilitate acceptance of its directive.
Yeah, at that level. Thank you very much, gentlemen and ladies, on this. This is a conversation that we'll keep watching, especially with this religious tint to it, with the tensions that is created. I'm grateful that you joined us. We'll revisit it again as we see how the Education Ministry enforces it. I'm grateful. Enjoy the rest of your evening.